Cześć! In the intro episode, I promised that I will explain why I personally think that it is very important to bring more and more people's attention into specialty coffee industry. There is so many reasons, I'm telling you, but there is this one particular reason that I find quite significant, and that's what we're gonna start off with. So ladies and gentlemen, coffee is in the risk of an extinction. You think it is pretty much impossible, or you just don't think about it at all. Why would you? Coffee is literally everywhere. Supermarkets, cafes, restaurants, of course, offices, schools. Pretty much everyone you go to visit has the coffee bag somewhere in their kitchen. Most of us at least, can afford it. And most of us drink it. If it's so accessible, how come I dare to say that the coffee will become some kind of luxury soon in the future, or what's even worse, disappears completely? It is very dark prediction. I am very aware of that. All over the world, there are people in organization working really hard to try to prevent this from happening. Like, for example, this non-profit organization, World Coffee Research, they provide all the information possible and help coffee survive. And I say survive because people working in coffee and coffee itself go through pretty rough times, yo. Here is just a few examples of why I think it is happening. First one, climate change. Whether you believe that it is the case or not, farmers have to acknowledge it. Have you ever wondered where does your coffee come from? I will show you. This is so-called coffee belt, the area where the coffee trees are the happiest to grow. Coffee trees can be very demanding, so they have to be cultivated in the regions with specific conditions. There are many species, they divide on varieties, and there's even more. They all like slightly different things, but in general, the coffee area belt for specific conditions occurring around the equator. So there is this perfect soil, there's this much sun and rainfall that they need, perfect temperatures that they love to give fruits in, and also they have their preferences of how high they want to be from above the sea level. For years, farmers were relying on those conditions to be stable, so their particular species and varieties will be doing good, and once a year they will be giving them fruits to harvest, sometimes twice a year. If the weather condition changes slightly, and for example there is not enough rainfall, the coffee won't be doing this great, right? And what is happening right now, what the plant is experiencing, it's not just a slight change. Conditions change dramatically. For example, the temperatures are rising, so the leaves of the trees experience sunburns, or they die because of droughts. The rainfall level is lowering, or they occur in random season when the coffee trees quite often are not even ready for it yet, or they are so extreme that they create massive floods. And when this happens, not only the whole plantation is ruined quite often, but also people die. Events like this bring nothing but loss for farmers. Their financial situation in most cases is not great. They live in developing countries, they don't have savings to survive after something like this. More importantly, when, for example, flood happens and it destroys everything, recovering from such an event is also very difficult because they need money to invest back in the plantation. Quite often they don't have any savings to rebuild the whole village. Not only they would have to buy a new coffee trees, and the baby trees, they need on average at least 3 years to give the first fruits. They don't have time to wait for another harvest if they even have money. If the harvest even occurs, if the weather conditions are stable and gentle. Second, less resistance to diseases and insects. Not only coffee trees are very picky about where they want to be growing, but also they can be very vulnerable when it comes to certain pathogens. There are things like fungus or insects, parasites that can attack trees in many very tricky ways. Like, for example, there is this insect called coffee berry borer. It only is 1 millimeter wide. What damage it could cause, you ask? Well, huge. Here's what it does. it finds the coffee tree, flies into the fruit, into the coffee fruit, drills the hole in it, and lays around 70 eggs. The larvae grows there, also eats whatever has left from the fruit, and then when it's mature, all the males stay in it, but females fly out to find another tree with another fruit and causing even bigger damage. Very difficult to control and even more difficult to combat. There are fruits eaten, so already a loss. But what also happens is that the fruit quite often stays on the tree and tends to rot, spreading the harmful bacteria all around the plantation, so it causes even bigger damage. Farmers again need money to fight with it. Even if they had money, and there are certain sprays that could potentially help, not only the sprays have some side effects, but also the bloody beetle becomes more and more resistant to it. First it was seen only in West Africa, so you could say, well, the rest of the coffee belt is fine. Not true. Later on it was seen also in Indonesia, after this in Guatemala and Brazil, and in 2012 it was also found in Hawaii, so it's pretty much everywhere now. And third, low coffee price. This is perhaps the saddest of all of the coffee production chain problems. By coffee price, I mean the money that farmers receive after they sell the coffee. Their job is extremely difficult. Entire families are involved in producing the coffee. Even if the weather is perfect and there is no diseases, the infrastructure on plantation is quite poor. People have to cross rivers by feet because the coffee plantation happens to be in a village that cannot afford the bridge, so they simply carry one another with the coffee basket on top of it and go through the river to collect the cherries in one same spot. Or for example, in Ethiopia, quite often coffee grows in a wild, dense forest, and farmers have to maneuver through all the trees and all the bush to get to the coffee tree so they can pick the cherries up and then bring them back down in a very difficult conditions. They work days and nights to provide the coffee that we love, but they don't even get to taste it. No bean can be wasted. Everything needs to be sold. And what is the saddest in this story is that none of their struggle is rewarded in the coffee price. Today's reality is that the coffee price doesn't even let the farmers to cover the cost of coffee production, let alone having any profits. Most of the coffee production lies on the so-called commodity coffee market. This is the coffee that you know from supermarkets. The price for this kind of coffee is dictated by a stock market. The same market that dictates price for oil or wheat. The whole process of making the price up is rather complicated, but it's very easy to understand from this process that farmers have no saying in the price. They have to sell the coffee for whatever they were told to sell it for. They have no choice. If they want to have some money, there's no negotiations. And today coffee industry is in crisis because the price for coffee dropped down historically low. For the last couple of years, on average, coffee price did not go higher than $1 per pound, and that is extremely low. It leaves 70% of coffee growing families living below existential minimum. Millions of people who are involved in coffee production rely on this price to increase because they have no food. They don't send kids to school, forget about the healthcare, but we want more and only better coffees. Maybe I think big, but I see some serious issues in the coffee production, and I mentioned only 3. There is many more. The subject is very complex. I am fully aware of that, and it hasn't just occurred overnight, so it won't be cured overnight either. If you were a farmer who has to deal with all the struggles on a daily basis, how long would you be willing to struggle before you actually move to another industry, if you even are able to do so you can provide some sense of security for yourself and your family? World Coffee Research predicts that demand of coffee will be only increasing. But first of all, the area suitable for growing coffee decreased by 50% by 2050. But also, taking all the problems and adding our current COVID-19 pandemic, because of the food insecurity, poverty, and farms dominance, there's less and less people willing to stay on a plantation and to cultivate coffee. So, am I worried? Yes. Do I think that this small YouTube channel and whatever we were gonna work on will prevent the entire coffee from disappearing from the planet? Of course not. The problems that I've just pointed out are acknowledged. People all over the world work really hard to prevent this from happening. There are some actions taking places by supporters of specialty coffee industry that recognizes farmers and the problems that are occurring in today's coffee world. Programs leading to more sustainable practices on the plantations are held. When put into day-to-day life, potentially farmers can save some money, they could grow better coffee and more resistant to all the diseases and insects. Experiment on species and varieties, on where and how they can be growing better, stronger, even more delicious are held. So don't get me wrong, I can see the light of specialty coffee. The challenge is that the light of specialty coffee industry covers only 5% total coffee production in the world, and that is definitely not enough. So here is us, you and me, regular coffee drinkers, who can make an actual change. If more of us reaches for a bag of beans that was produced, roasted, and sold by people who actually acknowledge the farmers and what is happening with the coffee production, the bigger the demand for this kind of coffee is. The more specialty coffee consumers, the bigger the chances that the market sooner or later will be working more towards farmers' benefits. There is more money staying in the plantations, so the farmers can grow more, better, delicious coffee. There is more money going towards some researchers that will help coffee thrive in the changing environments. Wouldn't you feel great knowing that only because you chose specialty coffee beans over commodity coffee beans, coffee might not extinct? Well, I would. If you want to know how to choose between two types of coffees, watch next episode. I will guide you through it. For now, thank you so much for watching. Peace and coffee. Or rainfall levels are the rainfall levels are I can't say it. I can't. For example, also the rainfall levels are lowering. The rainfall levels are lowering. No, I won't be able to say it.